Ethan Cole loved patterns. As a university auditor in Denver, he believed patterns kept mortgages paid and budgets honest. But one gray Tuesday, a new pattern screeched into his life, literally. A shiny black SUV kissed the rear bumper of his aging sedan. Out stepped a tall man in an expensive suit, still talking on his phone, smirking like the sidewalk belonged to him. "Travis Vaughn," he said, handing Ethan a business card without really looking at him. "Insurance will handle it. You're okay, right?" Then, almost casually, Travis added, "Hey, by the way, you don't happen to know Grace Morales, do you? From Halpern and Ames Compliance? Saw her at the Marriott last week. That blue dress, unforgettable." Ethan's fingers tightened around the card. Grace had told him she worked late that night. No conference, no hotel, no blue dress. She'd left home in her gray office suit. Now, Travis's offhand compliment made the air around Ethan feel thin and electric. He said nothing, just nodded, and watched Travis drive away as if nothing in the world could touch him. That evening, Grace floated into the hallway, kissed Ethan on the cheek, and sorted through the mail. "How was your day?" she asked. Ethan mentioned Travis's name. For a second, the envelopes in her hands froze. Then she smiled, too quickly. "He probably confused me with someone else. You know how people mix things up at conferences." Her phone buzzed on the counter. A preview flashed on the lock screen. "Can't wait for Thursday. T." Ethan didn't unlock it. He just watched until the screen went dark again. Later that night, he opened his laptop and started keeping a different kind of spreadsheet, one that tracked time, places, and tiny inconsistencies that could either fit together or destroy a life. The patterns emerged fast. Brighter makeup on certain mornings. Errand that took too long. A new credit line in Grace's name. And a consumer loan that never hit their joint account. Dinner receipts from downtown bistros on nights she claimed to be buried in reports. Hotel stops in the suburbs. Lingerie from stores she'd never set foot in before. Ethan's spreadsheets didn't rage. They told the truth. While he highlighted cell after cell, his 17-year-old daughter, Chloe Cole, knocked on the door, all her mother's fire and her father's calm. "Dad, you okay? Mom's been weird lately, like she's hiding something, but she's happy about it." "Just work," he said, swallowing hard. The lie tasted flat. The next morning, Ethan didn't drive to campus. He parked across from Halpern and Ames. At 11:47 a.m., Grace walked into the cafe on the corner. Travis was already there. They leaned in close. His hand brushed hers. She didn't pull away. 43 minutes later, they left together, heading for the parking lot. His hand rested on her lower back, like he owned the air around her. Ethan followed, 2 cars behind, all the way to a modest hotel 20 minutes west. He waited 3 hours. That night, Grace came home exhausted from reviewing reports. Ethan served dinner. He added a new tab to his spreadsheet. Thursday's hotels, Travis. The blue dress entry finally had an address. Ethan's jaw tightened. Grace wasn't just risking their marriage. She'd been moving his own money to cover another man's gambling debts. Once his job had been to protect budgets. Now it was to protect himself and his 17-year-old daughter, Chloe. Brilliant, quick smiling like her mother, but with her father's cautious eyes. One evening, while Ethan sat at the kitchen table reviewing statements, Chloe leaned against the doorway. "You've been acting weird lately," she said. "And Mom, she's different too." "How different?" "Happy, like she's keeping a good secret. She's buying new clothes, expensive ones, always on her phone, smiling at someone. You don't see it. Ethan forced a small smile. Maybe things are going well at work. Chloe didn't look convinced but stayed silent. By the second Thursday of March, Ethan's schedule was precise down to the minute. He even knew which elevator Grace and Travis usually used at the Fairmont. But knowing was enough. He wanted proof that couldn't be denied. He rented a small office, a one-room space right across from Halpern and Ames. Paid 3 months in advance, cash from his retirement savings. The landlord didn't ask questions. From that window, Ethan had a perfect vantage point and a secure place to keep the high-end camera gear he'd just bought, a long focus lens, a discreet tripod, and enough memory cards to store months of footage. He also installed home software that tracked activity not on Grace's phone, but on their Wi-Fi router. Every email, every site, every connection. What he found made his stomach twist. Visits to divorce lawyer websites. A consultation booked under her work email. Bank transfers, small, regular, always to her personal account. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. It was a plan to escape her plan. Ethan began to think not as a betrayed husband, but as a strategist. He didn't want a shouting match. He wanted to corner her, to strip away the option of lying or walking away untouched. Travis Vaughn would be the first crack in the dam. If the man's finances were as unstable as they looked, Ethan could give him a push and watch Grace's secret world collapse with him. His first move was subtle. An anonymous email to Halpern and Ames' internal audit department, flagging potential discrepancies in travel and expense reports. No names, just dates, numbers, and enough detail to put Travis under the microscope. His second move was personal. A polite, concerned phone call to Boston, where Travis's wife, Vanessa, lived with her 2 kids. Ethan introduced himself as a colleague worried about some irregularities in joint accounts Travis might have accessed. He left her curious and suspicious, enough to check her own records. The third move was the boldest. He reached out to the private investigator Vanessa, secretly hired to confirm Travis's affair, and offered valuable financial data he'd come across. By the end of the month, the stage was set. The numbers were ready to speak. And Ethan knew numbers never shout. They whisper, just loud enough for the right people to hear. It started with whispers in the corporate hallways. Talk of audits, inconsistencies in travel claims. Ethan didn't need to hear Grace's words to sense her fear, the way she gripped her phone tighter when certain emails arrived, or how her eyes flicked sideways when her boss walked by. By the second week, Travis Vaughn no longer strutted through Halpern and Ames like he owned the place. He still wore those immaculate suits, but there was a crease around his mouth now, a stiffness in his stride, like a man carrying glass and praying not to drop a shard. Ethan watched all of it from his rented office, camera ready. Through the lens, he caught brief meetings between Grace and Travis. No more holding hands in public, no long lunches. Their encounters grew shorter, their faces tighter. He could feel the tension tightening around Travis like a noose. And Ethan was just getting started. One Thursday afternoon, Ethan took his usual seat in the Fairmont Hotel bar, sipping coffee while Grace and Travis met upstairs. 40 minutes later, far less than their usual 3-hour disappearances, the elevator doors opened. Grace stepped out first. Her posture was rigid, her face flushed, but not from pleasure, from anger. Travis followed her out of the elevator, jaw tight, saying something fast through his teeth, but Grace didn't respond. They crossed the hotel lobby without touching, without smiling. Ethan didn't need to hear their words. Body language told him everything. Something had cracked. That evening, Grace came home early, for the first time in months. She hung up her coat, opened a bottle of wine, and poured herself a glass without even taking off her heels. "Tough day?" Ethan asked from the kitchen. She let out a sharp laugh. "Stressful. Some kind of audit at work. Everyone's on edge, probably nothing serious, but you know how these things snowball. MHM, Ethan murmured. Audits don't appear out of nowhere. Someone usually gives them a reason. Her eyes flicked toward him for half a second before she shrugged and left the room. The next week brought the first public blow. From his office window, Ethan saw two men in suits escorting Travis Vaughn out of Halpern and Ames. No handcuffs, not yet, but enough to start a storm of whispers through the building. Grace didn't come in that day. Ethan knew. He'd checked. Her car disappeared mid-morning. Her GPS pinged from a cafe miles away. That night, she didn't mention Travis. Didn't mention the audit. Didn't mention the scene in the lobby. She just poured another glass of wine and went to bed early. Every silence became another piece of the puzzle. And then the real ending began. Vanessa Vaughn, armed with credit card statements, bank transfers, and a thick dossier from a private investigator, filed for divorce and sent everything to federal authorities. Within days, Travis Vaughn was arrested for embezzlement, wire fraud, and corporate theft. A local business magazine splashed his mugshot across the front page. Ethan didn't celebrate. Not yet. He knew the next move had to be personal and perfectly timed. That Saturday, Ethan printed every document he gathered over the past 3 months. Photos of Grace and Travis entering hotels and apartments during work hours. Bank statements showing transfers from their joint account. Screenshots of her new credit card, maxed out on purchases she could never justify. Carefully cropped email chains and text previews. Discreet but damning. He placed everything into a neat folder and left it on the kitchen table. When Grace came home, she looked tired. Hair up in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. She froze when she saw the folder. "What's this?" "Sit down," Ethan said quietly. She hesitated, then sat, fingertips brushing the folder as if it might burn her. "I know," he said simply. Her eyes shot up to his. "Know what?" "About Travis. The hotels. The money transfers. The credit in both our names. And that blue dress, the one you never wore for me." Grace's face went through a slow sequence. Shock, denial, calculation, and finally weary acceptance. "How long have you known?" she whispered. "Since the day he hit my car," Ethan said. "That's the day you stopped being my wife and became an entry in my ledger." She opened the folder, leafing through the evidence. "This is a lot of work." "I'm good at my work," Ethan replied, his voice calm. "And my job now is making sure you can't take anything else from me or from Chloe." Her jaw tightened. "What do you want?" Ethan leaned back in his chair. His voice was firm, final. "I want you gone. Tonight, you'll sign the divorce papers. Full custody goes to me. You'll leave with what you brought into this marriage and nothing more. That's not fair. Stealing from your family to pay another man's debts isn't fair either," Ethan said, his words sharp as glass. "Pack your things." She looked at him for a long moment, then closed the folder. "I never wanted it to end like this." "But it did," Ethan said, "and now it's over." That night, Grace packed 2 suitcases. Ethan carried them to her car without a word. When Chloe came home later, the house felt unusually quiet. "Where's Mom?" she asked. Ethan sat her down and told her carefully, honestly, what had happened. "You're getting divorced?" "Yes," he said, "but it means you get to stay with me. Always." For the first time in months, the house felt peaceful, not from tension, but from relief. 2 months later, after Grace had left, the air in the house finally felt lighter. Ethan cooked dinner without checking the clock, took long walks with Chloe, even found himself staying up late reading again. But peace never lasts untested, not when someone refuses to accept it's over. It began with a knock on the door one quiet Saturday morning. Grace stood on the porch, hair shorter, eyes hollow, a worn cardigan pulled tight around her shoulders. "You destroyed us like we were cells in your spreadsheet," Gray said flatly. "You ruined Travis. You ruined me, because you couldn't stand seeing me happy." Ethan crossed his arms. "You destroyed yourself," he said quietly. "I just made sure the truth had consequences." Her eyes flashed. "If you just talked to me, maybe I would have stopped." "Would you have?" he asked. Grace looked away. "I don't know." "That's what I thought," he said, calm as ever. In the weeks that followed, Ethan noticed small signs that someone was trying to rattle him. A long key scratch across his car. 2 late-night calls from block numbers that hung up the second he answered. And one night, a note tucked under his wiper blade. "Even saints fall." He didn't flinch. He filed a police report, upgraded the home security system, and made sure Chloe never walked to the bus stop alone. Whoever wanted to scare him would have to try harder. Then came Grace's last, desperate attempt to take control. Through a mutual acquaintance, she spread a rumor that Ethan had fabricated evidence against Travis, trying to destroy his reputation in the same corporate circles where Ethan's own integrity was his identity. It didn't last long. Halpern and AIM's internal audit had its own independent proof of Travis's crimes. And Vanessa Vaughn's private investigator had time-stamped photos Ethan had never even seen. The truth was too well documented to rewrite. One evening, Chloe came home with a college scholarship essay prompt. "Describe a time when you showed resilience." She looked at Ethan across the dinner table and said softly, "I think I already know what I'll write about." He didn't have to ask what she meant. Spring came to Denver with long days and a kind of quiet Ethan hadn't felt in years. He and Chloe planted tomatoes in the backyard, her laughter mixing with the clink of garden tools. The house no longer felt like a place full of secrets. It finally felt like home. One Friday evening, Chloe stepped in from the porch, phone in hand. "Mom called again," she said. "I didn't answer." Ethan dried his hands on a kitchen towel. "When you're ready, you'll decide what kind of relationship you want with her," he said gently. "That's your choice." Chloe nodded, then gave a faint smile. "I already know." A week later, Ethan stopped by a local bookstore after noticing a flyer for an author meet and greet. He struck up a conversation in line with a woman, Lydia Clare, sharp-eyed, warm-voiced, quick to smile. They talked about books, about travel, about nothing and everything. When she handed him her number, he didn't promise to call, but he didn't throw it away either. That night, sitting on the porch in a quiet sky, Ethan thought about how far things had come. He'd lost a wife but kept his daughter, lost his naive faith, but gained the strength to protect what truly mattered. The balance in his mind was finally restored, not just by revenge, but by precision, honesty, and restraint enough to leave nothing unfinished. Chloe joined him on the steps, resting her head on his shoulder. "You okay, Dad?" Ethan smiled. "Better than okay," he said. And for the first time in a very long while, it was true.